Hello everyone, and welcome to another R tutorial video. And in this video we're going to pick up where we left off talking about plotting, and specifically recreating this histogram that we made with the base R packages and the hist function in the GGPLOT2 package. And for those of you that aren't familiar with GGPLOT2, it is again an implementation of the grammar of graphics for generating figures in R. So if we're going to use GGPLOT2, we're going to have to install GGPLOT2. And so what I would like to do is I'd like to go through how you would do that using the RStudio Packages tab. So I've already installed it, but what you would do if you haven't installed it is you would click this install button right here, and then you would type in GGPLOT2 in the packages dialog box, and you'll see that it actually auto-completes GGPLOT2. You want to make sure that you have install dependencies checked, because this will install everything that GGPLOT2 needs. And then you would click install. Now again, I already have it installed on my system, so I am not going to click install, but you would click install. So once you have it installed, in your R code up here, you would type in library and then GGPLOT2. And then you would run that code. And now you have access to GGPLOT2's functions. So the point of this video is to recreate this histogram. Let me rerun this really quick. Control Enter to run code. To recreate this histogram using GGPLOT2. Now, GGPLOT2 works a little bit differently, actually works very differently from the base R plotting functions. And the way that GGPLOT2 works is it works on this idea of layers. And so the way that this works, we're going to start off by making a gplot. That's a variable called gplot for ggplot. Actually, just call itghist, since we're being a little bit more specific here. Since we're creating a histogram with ggplot. So the first thing you need, regardless of what type of plot you're going to make in ggplot, is a base ggplot object. And we're going to open and close parentheses here. So inside of this ggplot object, you need to pass in some information. The first is data, and the second is mapping equals, and then you're going to do AES for aesthetics. So let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at here. So GGPLOT2 uses the ggplot function to create a default ggplot object. And so what I want to do is I want to start with just the data first. So we want the data to be iris. So if we hit enter, you know what, let's actually remove this so that it actually executes the code whenever we run it. So if you do that, what you'll see is we now have a blank canvas. Right? We have just this gray rectangle here. So this is what the default ggplot object looks like. And the way that ggplot works is we're going to be adding things to this canvas. So the next thing I said that needs to go inside of the ggplot function is this mapping equals AES. And what this does is it maps, right, that's why it's called mapping, right, it maps. AES is for aesthetics. So aesthetics are essentially all the things that you would traditionally think about on a graph. So things like X, the X data, the Y data if you need it, things like color, size, shape, right? These are all sort of aesthetics of the plot. And what mapping does is mapping links these aesthetics, right? The X, Y, color, shape, size. It links those to the data. And so what we're going to do here, because we're just trying to recreate that basic plot, is we're just going to do x, because we want to map the x aesthetic, or the x variable, to a thing from the data set. Now, the key difference between ggplot and the base R functions here is that we've already told it what data to look at with iris. So all we have to do here is just type in sepal.width. So if we run this, you'll see that now, because we've mapped the x aesthetic to sepal width, you'll see that we've now included our x-axis here with sepal width. But yet we still don't have anything on the actual plot itself. And the reason for that is because we haven't actually told it what we want to create. We've just given it some data and we've mapped the x variable to the data set. Now, as I mentioned before, ggplot works on this idea of layers. And it's going to look kind of different from a syntax perspective from what we've been doing before, but we're actually going to literally use the plus sign to add layers. So we're going to use the plus sign, and then this is where you will see just how diverse ggplot actually is. So the way that this works is we've told it what data we want, we've told it what we want to call the x, to control the x component. If we want to tell it what we want to make, all of the different sort of plots are what are called geometries. ggplot calls them geometries. And the geom underscore is the way that all of the geometries are going to start. All of the geometry objects, or the geometry layers, are going to start. Now I'm just going to quickly scroll down to histogram so you can get a feel of just how many of these things there are. All right. So we're going to add a geom histogram. We don't need to pass in anything to this because it's going to grab everything from this original ggplot function right here. It's going to grab the data, it's going to grab the aesthetics. So if we run this, we've created the histogram. Now you'll notice that it looks a little bit different, and that's because of this bin width. Right? It set the default value to 30. We could change that bin width to make it better match the original, the base R function. But you'll see that, just to look at the code here, right? In base R we called histogram iris $ sepal width. In ggplot we had a little bit more code. So you may be asking yourself, well, why would I even bother using ggplot if I wanted to make a histogram? And the answer to that is kind of complicated. If all you wanted to do was make a quick R graphic to just visualize your data, then this histogram function is probably the way to go. But what ggplot allows you to do is it allows you to make more complex graphics. The graphics are better suited for exporting. You can do a lot of tweaking in terms of fonts and sizes and things to be able to create publication quality graphics. So again, if you're just trying to do something quick, this hist function is probably just fine. But if you're trying to make something that's a little bit more professional, you really are going to want to delve into ggplot. So hopefully this made sense. Again, we're going to go through some more examples in the next few videos. So if you don't immediately grasp this concept of data and mapping and geoms, don't worry. However, if any of the specifics in this video felt confusing, I encourage you to go back, rewatch the parts you're confused about, and as always, please reach out. Thank you.